You're listening to a podcast appearing on the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network.
Wouldn't it be cool if advertising for your food or barbecue-related company could last forever? It can with Perpetual advertising. Here's how it works. Unlike TV or radio ads where every instance the ads are broadcast are only played once and lost forever, Perpetual advertising, on the other hand, can have repeat exposure and replayability for weeks, months, and even years after they're inserted in a weekly Firecast podcast. So, even if a podcast is a few months or even a few years old, your ads will still be impactful to repeat listeners as well as new listeners who download to listen to the show. This gives your advertising dollar the most bang for the buck. You can find out more about Perpetual advertising sponsorship opportunities by filling out the simple web form at twoguystalking.com/Firecast. That's the numeral 2, guystalking.com/Firecast. This is the weekly Firecast, episode 32, Chili Pepper Gardening and Growing with Dave DeWitt.
Strap yourselves in. It's time for the weekly Firecast. This is the podcast for all foodies, those who love food that is cooked over a fire or feels like fire in your mouth. If you love spice, smoke, sauce, and all things savory, this is the show for you. And now, here's your host, chili head and barbecuer, Scott Roberts.
And a big hearty welcome goes to all the foodies out there, and in particular ones like you and me, chili pepper lovers, hot sauce fanatics, barbecuers and grillers, people who love things on the spicy side of things. That's what we're all about here on the Weekly Firecast. Again, my name is Scott Roberts. I'm a blogger, a writer for Chili Pepper Magazine, and for about the next hour, I'm going to give you the only show on the web that focuses on hot sauce, fiery foods, chili peppers, and barbecue. So there's another slam dunk of a show in store for you. For my Fire Talkers interview of the week, I talked to none other than chili pepper and author Dave DeWitt. Now, I last interviewed him a couple months ago. He's the producer of the National Fiery Foods and Barbecue Show out in Albuquerque, just celebrated its 25th anniversary this March. But Dave is well-versed in growing and cooking with chili peppers, so I wanted to get his thoughts on the basics of gardening and growing chilies. We have that to look forward to later in the show. And then in another segment, I talked to George and Bruce Pryor of the BBQ Dragon tool. And there are a couple of brothers. Like I said, it's a brand new barbecue tool that they're looking for funding on Kickstarter. But I wanted to find out what this is all about. And if you yourself have not seen us online on Facebook, I know it's been kind of making the rounds as far as the links and pictures and description. What it actually looks like is, for lack of a better term, a big cylinder, kind of like a hairdryer. It's supposed to blow air in varying speeds on your hot charcoals to make your fire light up quicker, your coals get hotter quicker. So I talked to them later about that, their Kickstarter project, and a possible price for an appliance like that. Again, that tool is called the BBQ Dragon. And if you're curious right now, you can go over to the website BBQ Dragon and take a look at it as you're listening to this. So again, that's coming up in just a bit, probably somewhere in the middle of the show. In my tip of the week, I give you a little tip on grilling and barbecue chicken. And then Louisiana-based chili head reviewer and blogger Ken Alexander returns for his regular Ken's Fiery World segment. And he and I talk about spicy desserts. And let me tell you, you can glean a lot of great ideas for incorporating heat into your sweet. So you'll definitely want to stick to that segment. And then for my product review of the week, I talk about Molten Orange Ambrosia Pepper Sauce from Captain Jim's Sauces. A hot sauce that has quite a bit of savory in it, but has a lot of sweet. And as you can probably guess from the description of it, it does have a lot of fruity orange flavoring in it. So all that's coming up in just a few minutes. And before we get to all those regular monthly segments, there's a few housekeeping notes. As most of you know, the Weekly Firecast is a proud part of the Two Guys Talking Podcast Network. And there are just a slew of other great programming on Two Guys Talking, including a couple of other shows that I'm the co-host of. And one in particular I wanted to mention was the Two Guys Talking Dexter podcast. Yes, if you're a big fan of the Showtime show Dexter, about the serial killer of serial killers, both the show on Showtime and our little old podcast is making a big return in now less than 2 months. Now, the show itself on Showtime returns on June 30th, and our podcast, we will be covering each and every single episode after it airs. So join co-host Mike Wilkerson and I as we review and analyze and break down each and every single episode of Dexter. And another little timely topical thing that I'm doing over at my blog, scottrobertsweb.com. And quickly, if you only know me from my podcast, The Weekly Firecast, I run a fiery foods and hot sauce blog at scottrobertsweb.com for over 5 years now. So be sure to take a look at that and bookmark that if you haven't already. Well, anyway, right now we're in the middle of what I call the Ultimate Hot Sauce Showdown. Now, back in February, I asked you guys to nominate what you thought were your favorite hot sauces currently available. We've gotten hundreds of nominations. So my friend and helper Daryl Wayne compiled the top 64 vote getters. And so it's a tournament-style competition where two hot sauces are pitted against one another, and we'll leave it up to you, the blog readers, to vote for who you think is better in polls. So right now, as I speak, we're going through the initial 32 battles, which will be whittled down to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4, and then finally the championship between the two remaining hot sauces. So I invite everyone to get your opinion known. Check back at scottrobertsweb.com every couple days when a new matchup, a new contest between two different new hot sauces are put up. And be sure to vote and spread the word. Let other hot sauce fans you know about this partake in this little competition that is ultimately decided by you. So anyway, that's enough of me chit-chatting. Let's go ahead and get to the weekly segments.
And now, the Foodie Tip of the Week.
My tip of the week is to consider to spatchcock your whole chicken if you want it to cook faster. Now, spatchcocking is a method of opening up poultry, very similar to butterflying a fillet. Now, what you do to, let's say, a whole chicken is simply cut out the backbone. Now, if you have some nice kitchen shears, this could easily be done. Simply cut it out, and this will allow your chicken to unfold similar to a book. So you could still have your whole chicken there, bones and all, but obviously the thickness of the chicken is reduced. There's more surface area exposed, and this will allow you to cook, grill, and smoke your whole chicken faster.
And now, the review of the week.
My review subject this week is Captain Jim's Sauce's Molten Orange Ambrosia Pepper Sauce. This particular product I had first come across at last year's Weekend of Fire in Fairfield, Ohio. That was October 2012. And I've been trying to find a time, a situation to formally review this product, and I guess this is a good of a time as any to do this. The one thing I'll start off by mentioning, this is a medium thin consistency sauce. I like things a little bit more on the thicker end of the viscosity scale. I mean, it's not a major gripe, but yeah, this could have been a little denser for my taste. The actual look of the sauce, the color of the liquid is a deep murky yellow color. But one thing that you would notice is that it has thousands of huge dark specks, kind of greenish specks. So it gives us a very appetizing and very intriguing appearance. And it might throw some people off. It appears to be a savory sauce that contains a lot of herbs and spices. Let me go ahead and read the ingredients list off to you. Habanero peppers, water, honey, distilled vinegar, pineapple juice, mustard seed, orange juice concentrate, cilantro, salt, ground black pepper, turmeric, paprika, spices, and natural flavors. So one can assume that most of those flecks are, in fact, cilantro pieces. I mean, there's a few other things in there as well. I see a little bit of red, but appearance-wise, it's a very beautiful-looking sauce. But more importantly is the flavor of it. You take one lick of this off of a spoon by itself, and you get hit with a nice, complex, citrusy flavor. You get the tartness, a little bit of sugariness, and of course the orange juice concentrate, no doubt, is the main player in that department. I imagine it gets a lot of the supporting roles and the complexity thanks to the honey and the pineapple juice as well. But in partnership with that taste, you get a bright, tart, and very hot flavor from the vinegar and from the habanero peppers. Because habaneros are listed as the primary ingredient, you do get plenty of the habanero flavor as well as the heat from it. So therefore, if you're not a chili head, this may not be a sauce you would be interested in. It's a very, very hot sauce, very spicy. But actual flavor of the habaneros are able to shine through and meld beautifully with the orange citrusy flavor. Now, despite the appearance and despite the presence in the sauce itself, I did not get a lot of the cilantro. Maybe it's just cooked down to where the actual flavor of the cilantro and the other herbs and spices are just there as very subtle background notes. But nonetheless, it's a very tasty sauce. Now, because of the orange flavor, yes, believe it or not, it is great as an ice cream topper. Imagine an ultra-hot, complex kind of dreamsicle flavor with the orange and ice cream. It's very, very good in that regard. And as you can imagine, on shrimp, oh boy, marinate some shrimp in this sauce, plus splash on a little bit after you grill some, and you will be in orange shrimp heaven. This is also good on chicken as well. So for those kinds of applications, Molten Orange Ambrosia is a terrific product. The overall heat level ranks a 3.5 on a heat scale, with 5 being one of the hottest extract or maybe super hot sauces you've ever had. So it's got a significant amount of burn to it. But most important, the flavor is where the strengths of the sauce lie. And this gets a very, very high rating for me. I give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And since I give this a big thumbs up, I highly recommend that you go and try this product out for yourself. You can find Captain Jim's Sauces, an Indiana-based company, over at the website Captain Jim Sauces. There's only one S between the word Jim and sauces. Or you can just go to the show notes of episode 32 and click the link there.
And now, Ken's Fiery World.
And once again, we're talking with Chilihead blogger and reviewer Ken Alexander. What's going on in your world?
Oh, Greg, how you doing, Scott?
Pretty good.
That's good. Yeah, I'm hated I missed last week's segment. I've been traveling a good bit these days for my paying job. So anyway, I was out of pocket and out of touch, but I'm back in the saddle and ready to talk as a kind of a follow-up to our last, I think, segment. We talked about fruit-based sauces, I believe. Thought maybe we'd follow that up with spicy desserts.
Spicy desserts. Now you're talking my language here.
I have got a massive sweet tooth. Always have. So how do you blend, your chili head passion with a sweet tooth passion? And so, I kind of have gone out in search of and found some of the products that I really like to use and then some of the ways that I like to spice up normal desserts. So I thought, we could just chat about that a minute.
That sounds good. You mentioned like fruit-based sauces. What do you think of the sauces made specifically for desserts?
I've tried some and they work okay, but I actually find that a given sauce, if it's got the right palate and the right flavor blend, does just as well. Let's look at, one of my favorite sauces, if not it's not really a hot sauce as it is a finishing sauce, is Jack's Tailgater's raspberry chipotle sauce, along with their, that we talked about their pineapple orange hab, last episode. Mm-hmm. And the raspberry chipotle to me is one of the most versatile sauces I have, but I wouldn't necessarily put it on pizza. I put it on ice cream routinely. So when you've got a good fruit, smoke, heat, a little bit of heat sauce, I don't think that it necessarily needs to be that dedicated sauce. I think it's I just own the name, Golden Toad. It's a vanilla sauce that I've had that I've really enjoyed in the past, and a couple of others. You've got like Madison Chocolatiers with their chocolate caramel sauces. Or kind of
fantastic stuff.
Oh my gosh. I had some tonight that was their espresso sauce, that had ghost in it and had a little scorp in it. And I think that you have to be careful, with the peppers that you use as well. It kind of brings up, what peppers go well with it and what doesn't. And I know I'm kind of bouncing around, but, I think that Renee Rohrbach and Ricky Sanders have really got the corner on that spicy chocolate anyway, dessert model, with their sauces that I routinely put over ice cream, or I put it on brownies, or I put it on, just sometimes by the spoonful.
It is fantastic. You mentioned by the spoonful. It is literally something I could eat a whole jar of it by itself in one sitting. Not an exaggeration at all. I love it that much.
I do too. Their C3 sauce is one of my favorite dessert sauces. Big Fats. Jeremy and Kat Walsh out of Chicago have a partner company that they put out a chocolate sauce with his 808, his ghost sauce, 808 sauce in it, that I picked up some in Columbus at Firecast weekend. Mm-hmm. Very nice sauce as well. I know that, I think Peppermasters out of Canada. Oh, and the Australian company. What's
Wildfire Chilies?
Thank you very much. I know that Wildfire has some dessert, I think some chocolate-based sauce as well. But, as much as I love the chocolate and I love the chocolate-based sauces, it's the fruit ones that I really enjoy with ice cream. But I think, like I did one of my first, if not the first, blog post I did for Fiery World was for Red Hawk sauces. And I took their strawberry scorpion sauce and their B3 sauce. It had bananas and buttes in it, and made a banana split, basically. And I even took...
Oh, interesting.
Oh, it was very, I just took vanilla ice cream and I used the sauces over the ice cream and kind of made and wrote up about a spicy banana split, and it worked. Even though their strawberry scorpion sauce, while it's got fruit in it, is a generic enough sauce to where I could turn around and put it on meat or put it on a vegetable dish or something, but it also actually worked in with the ice cream. And I took some of the B3, which I've done with other sauces, and whipped it into whipped cream, mm-hmm. and to spice up a whipped cream topping for something. I think that's another good way to use it. I kind of want your listeners to hear some ideas, maybe not to get some ideas of some of the companies and some of the products they can do it with, but some of the things that I would enjoy. Heartbreaking Dawn's has got their fiery trail preserves, and Johnny's got different flavors of that now, as well as Flamin' Joe has got his spicy jellies, and other companies that have their spicy jellies and jams that you could put in fruit rolls or on pound cake. Things, regular plain cake as a topping, or even as a middle layer, in a layer cake. That's there. I think that would be a really nice use of blending that sweet and that spicy in a medium that's already blended sweet and spicy that's there.
And what do you think about things like desserts that are already made up? For instance, one thing I can think of is the Dessert Divas have some really great tasting, I don't know what you would call them, brownie stuff mixed up. They have something called rattlesnake bites. It's almost like a kitchen sink type thing. Has a little bit of heat thrown in there, but it's mostly sweet, and it's just fantastic. And also Heartbreaking Dawns, they have their Buchalokia brownies, their blondies, and they've also made chocolate chip cookies with Buchalokias in there as well.
So I've heard of the blondies. And actually, Johnny's Scorn Bread that he does for that Columbus weekend every year, and it's a limited edition product for him. If he would ever find a way to be able to get the preservative right to where he could market that's made for his fiery trail preserves. It really is. I mean, the bread's hot and it's sweet. The cornbread is. And so to put that jam on it, I think is awesome. Now, have you ever baked anything or put anything where you just put powder, like a cayenne powder or a hab powder, something like that in it?
I do that all the time. I tend to use that probably 80% of the time, as opposed to getting like fresh chili peppers and adding that to a recipe. Right. And that probably covers all cooking as well. But a lot of time I will add, it could be everything from ground cayenne, habaneros, ghost peppers, some of the things I've grown in my own garden. Just kind of ground them up, powder them up, and just have thrown them in everything. Now, I really can't do that with my two boys. I just can't throw in all that heat into every kind of sweet that I make. I have experimented with things like that before, just making things hot, especially desserts. Right. Even like a coffee. I will spice that up as well.
Right. And I've tried that. But, I share coffee with my wife, and while she can tolerate a lot of heat compared to a lot of people, and I think that she's gotten a lot more used to it over time living with me, it's not her first love. It's not a passion like it is with me, where I could see myself, dusting coffee on a pretty regular basis and enjoy that. The rest of my family's not going to enjoy it like that. Same as you have to kind of be careful how you cook and what you cook. So I end up sprinkling powder and things on things after they cook, while, and it probably would do better during the cooking process and cooking with it. You kind of make those allowances where you need to, where you've got, non-chili heads in the group.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that, when I look at it, for me, it's the sweeter, like I love the flavor of cayenne pepper. That's why I like cayenne sauces. I just love the flavor of pepper. It's got a really nice, light, fruity component to it that I think lends itself. I think that's why it's a very popular addition to chocolate. The habanero for me is that nice kind of fruity flavor that a hab's got. Jalapeno, I ate a chocolate covered jalapeno that I liked. So I would think that would do well, even though I haven't tried it, in a butte. But a scorpion pepper for me, I think you've got to be real creative or very careful because of the bitterness. But that's kind of my personal bias. That's not my favorite pepper in the world. So I find it a little more bitter, and I think it would be more difficult to incorporate into dessert, even though, that being said, Red Hawk strawberry scorp sauce did well, with it as a dessert sauce. For me. So, it can be done. I think Ricky and Renee, Madison Chocolatiers, use scorp in a lot of their scorpion stinger caramels, which are wonderful, and hot, kind of do a good job with that bitter, but they understand sweet and they understand sugar and how to play the bitter against the sweet, I think. And that's, the difference.
Another great chocolatier is a company called Cowgirl Spicy Chocolates. Now, they don't go outside of the box too terribly much like Madison Chocolatiers does. Mm-hmm. They're more of the straightforward, well, here's a chocolate truffle, but here's a little bit of habanero heat into it. Mm-hmm. Here is our spicy caramel sauce, but they don't add things like cinnamon, coffee that you'd mentioned before. They're more straightforward, but they're still very fantastic. And that's another one that the listeners should take a notice of. That's Cowgirl's Chocolates.
Even Captain Tom's. I haven't heard much out of Tom lately, but I know he and Nancy are still there in the Baltimore area, and I know he was at Zest Fest a year ago, and he was putting out some spicy dessert type items, some spicy sweet items. But I think that, it's easy to pick up and order something spicy and sweet. Almost any grocery store now has cayenne infused dark chocolate bars. That's a pretty common thing you can find. But I think it's, challenging ourselves to look at what we normally look at as dessert: ice cream, cake, frosting, brownies, breads, and kind of get creative with our sauce shelf, and see what flavor blends are going to work and try something. It's like I could see Steve Seabury's Grapes of Wrath did really well. It was kind of an autumn fruity thing, but it did really well on ice cream. I know Pater Fams has got a sauce that at Peppers last year, we were putting it on ice cream. Their Pawpaw Chipotle sauce, that was another really good one, mixed in ice cream. And I think that's a pretty natural, the cold and the sweet with the ice cream matching with the heat from whatever the other product is. But just the powders like you use and incorporate, I think that's something that would be fun. And we're getting into summertime and a lot of different lighter, fruitier based desserts that are out there. And so, fire them up, put a little powder in them, chop up some fresh habs and a fruit salad, do something that's going to add a little heat to your sweet, and make dessert time a little more fun.
Exactly. And another way I can think of, when I think of summertime, I think of a good fruit salsa, something with mangoes, putting it with some grilled fish. I mean, that's an excellent way of incorporating heat with the lighter, fruitier flavors that, a lot of people think of when they think of summer.
Oh, sure. And just in the mango, any kind of fruit salad, fruit compote, anything, when you talk specifically about dessert, I just think that a lot of people just don't. So it's time to put the heat away and just bring out the sweet. And so, as we kind of get into these summer months and people like that lighter, those lighter desserts, and angel food cake, I think with whipped cream and, what do they call it? An angel food truffle or whatever, when people break angel food cake with whipped cream and fruit. I mean, put in a little pepper powder, put in a little bit of cayenne, put in a little cayenne flakes, put in a little hab powder, a little butte powder, something like that. And not much, just enough to play with your palate and play with some heat, and really kind of complement and do the yin and yang with the sweet.
Excellent advice.
Yeah. pretty much what was on my mind this week, Scott.
Well, now you got me hungry for something. I'm going to have to dig through my my hot sauce bookshelf, see if there's any sweets that need to be eaten. Looking through my fridge.
There you go. Perfect. Well, it's a good thing. I'm getting ready to work out, so that's going to save me from honoring my sweet tooth with something a little spicy.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah. All right. Well, so for all the listeners out there, go spice up your sweet, put your little heat in your dessert next time, and always remember, ladies and gentlemen, that it is a fiery world.
Thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you, Scott. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Take care.
And now, the special feature of the week.
I'm on the Skype chat line with George and Bruce Pryor of the BBQ Dragon product. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks a lot.
Doing great, Scott. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. I've seen little glimpses of potential in other tools, for instance, like the Luft Lighter. But the BBQ Dragon looks like something totally different. Now, for the listening audience who have never seen this before, go ahead and describe what the BBQ Dragon is.
Well, this is actually replaces the action that you do where you're waving a paper plate or blowing on a fire to try to get it ready or get it hotter. What this does is clips to the side of any barbecue or a fire pit or fireplace, and has an adjustable speed fan that you can adjust to aim just where you want it and then walk away. And then a few minutes later, your fire is just roaring.
Now, does the BBQ Dragon itself, does it light the charcoal briquettes?
No, it doesn't. And actually, you mentioned the Luft Lighter, and you're totally right that they actually do different jobs. To us, the difficult part about starting charcoal isn't the initial ignition. There's a lot of different ways to start charcoal. What's hard about it is standing around waving a paper plate for 40 minutes or whatever else it has to do to wait for your charcoal to get ready. So the Luft Lighter will ignite the charcoal, but then if you wanted it to be ready fast, you'd have to stand around that hot fire.
Gotcha. So what the BBQ Dragon is, and forgive me for like this rudimentary description, it's kind of looks like a big tube, almost like a hairdryer, but you clip it to the side of your, like you said, your barbecue grill, smoker, wherever it is that you want to light. So now, Is this thing battery powered or is it AC powered?
It's battery powered, and you described it very accurately. It's a tube that other people do call it a battery powered hairdryer. It's actually quite a bit more high tech than a battery powered hairdryer. Clips to your grill and it blows on the fire. And
you mentioned the adjustable speed fan.
But we built it with a variable speed switch on it. So what we wanted was a tool that you could use for all kinds of different applications. And we found that only having a single speed or two speeds just didn't allow us to use the tool for all of the different things we want to be able to use it for. You can use it on a fire pit and a fireplace. You can use it on I've used it camping in front of the campfire. And for all those different applications, you need to be able to adjust the amount of air that is being blown on the fire. And so we've included a variable speed switch on there. So it's battery powered, like you'd asked before. It's battery powered. You can take it with you anywhere, and then you can control the speed of it for all kinds of different fires that you're trying to start.
Now, is the air itself that comes out, is it hot? Is it just regular air temperature?
Yeah, just regular air temperature, because it does that job of waving a paper plate. It's oxygen that gets the fire going really fast. Usually you've got the fuel there, the charcoal, and it's already been ignited. Now the fire lacks oxygen, and that's always a problem, especially in, for example, if you use a ceramic cooker or a pizza oven, the fire is buried way down deep inside the piece of equipment itself. So it's a little bit tough to control the amount of oxygen that gets down it, and this is perfect for those kinds of applications.
And you said that it ran on regular AA batteries?
Right. It's regular AA batteries. Our idea when we were trying to design this thing was that we wanted the batteries to be replaceable in case you forgot to charge it up and you're out camping or you got guys coming over and you want to start a fire. But it also had to be rechargeable and we made it rechargeable with a cell phone charger. It's a micro USB charger because everybody's used to stuff being ready to go. And so when you're done with this thing, you just pop it back into the charger and it's always ready to go and whenever you need to start a fire.
Oh, nice. About how long does a fan run on like one charge?
On one charge, it'll go, on high speed, it'll go for over an hour. We actually have a lot of time and research into this because, being battery powered, it's got to be very efficient to run for an hour. And we wanted it to be able to start, 6 or 8 fires. And it'll start a typical charcoal grill in about 10 minutes. And we wanted you to be able to use it a bunch of times, not have to charge it up every time afterwards. And so on high speed, it'll start about 6 fires. And on medium speed, it'll run for upwards of 3 hours before the batteries start to go down. And that'll start, you'd be able to use that thing for weeks and weeks at a time before you'd have to recharge it.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of the big differences between the fan that we use and a hairdryer fan. Hairdryers don't need to be very efficient. You just plug them into the wall. And so not a lot of technology goes into making those fans perfectly efficient. And that's no good for our application because we got to make it last. So we have a really beautiful little fan in there. Each blade on it has an airfoil, and it pushes the air along there really efficiently and saves the battery. So that was a big deal in this.
Now, right now, you have a Kickstarter page for this, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Of course, I'll put the link in the show notes for everybody to go to. Now, is it currently available commercially, or is right now you're trying to raise the funds through Kickstarter to get it out on the market?
Yeah, that's exactly it. What we're trying to do is raise funds actually for a bigger production run. We've already found a manufacturer, and we've built our tooling, and we're ready to just push the button for that run. But after we released the thing at the HPBA, the Hearth Patio Barbecue Association Expo a month ago or so, we had a really huge reaction to it. And we just got so many orders and people asking for distribution that we realized the order we can place is not going to be near big enough. So Kickstarter is a good alternative for that to raise funds, and then we'll be able to order a big production run. But as soon as we have that, then we ought to be able to have product within 6 weeks or so.
After that, are you looking at a specific price point that you guys might sell this for?
Yeah, I think we're thinking like $49 is going to be a good value.
$49? That doesn't sound too terribly bad. I'm looking at the Kickstarter page right now, and the actual clip itself looks humongous, like a big, heavy-duty clip. So I imagine that would be one thing you wouldn't want to slip off and fall into, your fire pit or your coals or anything like that. So
yeah, exactly. And it's a little bit trickier to make a clamp that does all the things we need it to do than we had first imagined, because it's got to fit really tightly on the edge of a kettle grill, which, is what we like to cook on. We use Weber's. We think they're really great for charcoal cooking. But also it has to fit on an andiron of a fireplace or a tree branch if you're out camping, or the side of your smoker. And so we made it so it can open up really big, and it's also strong and fits on grills. But the most important thing is, look how the handles go off to the side of the grill so that they're out of the way of the radiant heat from the fire. That was a big problem because you clip the thing to the side of your grill, and the handles will get hot if they're not bent down over the side like that.
Where I'm looking at it right now, which everybody can see the same thing over at bbqdragon.com or the aforementioned Kickstarter page. Yeah, the handles aren't sticking up to where people would think. It's more like at a 90-degree angle.
Right.
From how it clips on there.
That's right, yeah.
Then you have that stainless steel neck with the flexibility to where you can kind of aim it exactly where you want to.
Exactly, yeah. And that changes everything for this product, too. We found that if the thing's solid, let's say, imagine it without that flexible neck, it so limits where you can use it. This thing is literally infinitely adaptable to any kind of barbecue, smoker, fire pit. That's the thing that I think people miss when they first look at the product. They say, well, all right, it's a fire starter, and I guess it can start charcoal a little faster than a charcoal chimney. That's all good. But is it worth it? This thing is so much more than that. For example, with controlling the heat of fires. In smokers, as we've already been talking about, it's so important to keep a constant temperature. And if you let your fuel run a little bit low in your bullet smoker, and then you toss some more charcoal in, the heat's way down. It's going to take 20 minutes, half an hour for that new charcoal to catch and go. You can aim this thing in on the adjustable neck with a clip to the door and heat the charcoal back up to cooking temperature in less than a minute. It saves so much time when you're smoking.
It sounds very simplistic. It probably would fit quite a bit of needs that barbecuers and grillers would have. One
thing I use it for all the time, when you have a big barbecue and you're cooking a bunch of food for an hour or two, the coals start to burn out, and you get to a point where your grill isn't hot enough. And that's another great use for this thing that a lot of people don't realize. you throw some new charcoal on your grill and you blast it with the Dragon for a minute or two, and you have a nice hot grill again, and you can keep right on grilling. Or I do that specifically if I'm going to cook some dessert. I like to do grilled peaches after dinner or something like that. And by then the fire's died way down, and so I just hit it with the Dragon for a minute or two. It gets that fire right back up and hot, and I can cook a dessert with it.
A lot of good uses for it. So, again, I will direct everyone to the Kickstarter page. If they feel like they can contribute, they can go ahead and do so, or just take a look at it. Where do you guys hope to see your company go in the next year or two?
We have high expectations for a product like this. There's nothing else like it that's on the market. And once you start using it, at least, it's easy for Bruce and I to say, but you'll see once you get your hands on one of these things, you realize it makes grilling so much more fun, so much easier, gives you so much more control over fires. And there were 16 million barbecue grills sold in the United States last year alone. It's by far the most popular pastime in the world. There's just a huge market for this, and we think that it really innovates this market.
Excellent. So, again, George, Bruce Pryor of the BBQ Dragon, thank you very much for being on the podcast today, guys.
Hey, thanks a lot, Scott. Thanks for talking with us.
Yeah, really fun to be here, Scott. Thanks.
Hey, my pleasure. We'll be back after these messages, so stick around.
Looking for a straightforward user interface and a cost-effective, feature-filled multi-track recording software? Call off the search! Mixcraft from Acoustica has exactly what you're looking for. It's time to include reliable audio creation and editing software with real punch into your projects. Check out Mixcraft now over at acoustica.com/Mixcraft and start a new generation of audio creation and editing today.
Hi, this is David Carete, host of the Fangbanger Podcast. Don't forget to check out the Two Guys Talking perspective review of Die Hard over at twoguystalking.com/Die Hard. That's the number 2, guystalking.com/Die Hard.
Having a friendly, relatable voice can make all the difference in your marketing efforts. Let Scott Roberts' voiceover be that voice. I can give you the goods, whatever your need is, whether it be for commercials, podcasts, voicemail phone systems and on-hold messages, business presentations, websites, audiobooks, and more. If you require a personable, real, down-to-earth voiceover artist, then look no further. You can find out more at scottrobertsvoice.com.
Blood, a dark passenger. The binding ties of clear plastic. They're not just hallmarks of the hit Showtime television program, Dexter. They're bullet points talked about each week on the Dexter podcast from Two Guys Talking. Don't miss out on killer dialogue that leaves you with a bloodlust for more. It's the Two Guys Talking Dexter podcast for Dexter fans. Find out more now at twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2, guystalking.com.
Get what you want with the Life on the Half Shelley podcast, only on the Two Guys Talking podcast network.
Fight Ribbon Clothing Company. Clothing and fight gear on a mission. Fight Ribbon is the original MMA clothing company built from the ground up for fighters and fans. Clothing with a purpose. The new face of cancer awareness. Fight Ribbon Clothing Company. Because what you wear matters. Visit fightribbon.com.
And we're back with more of the weekly Firecast.
And now, the Fire Talkers interview.
And once again, I am talking with chili pepper expert and author Dave DeWitt. Now, the last time we spoke was a few months ago, right before the 25th anniversary of the Fiery Foods and Barbecue Show, which he is the producer of. This time out, I would like to get his perspective on chili pepper gardening and growing for the novices listening to this podcast episode. So, Dave, how's everything going on in your world?
Everything's fantastic. It's beautiful here in Albuquerque, and can be bright sunshine all day. A good day for planting chili peppers.
And it's a beautiful day to talk about them as well. Now, Dave, do you have any statistics as far as the number of gardeners who typically grow chili peppers in the gardens, say, in the U.S.?
Well, they probably have some stats about the people who are doing it professionally as farmers rather than gardeners, but nobody keeps track of who might grow a few peppers in their backyard or something like that. Most people grow a combination of plants. They don't stick to one thing. For example, growing chard and kale and broccoli and tomatoes, a lot of tomatoes this year I grew from seed, and some super hot chilies. So I've got a mix of a whole bunch of things. I don't grow New Mexican chilies because it's just too easy to get them fresh green. They're grown all around here, so it doesn't make any sense to waste garden space for something that's such a common crop in New Mexico. So I grow mostly tomatoes, I would say.
Mostly tomatoes, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. What advice would you give to the novice chili heads who are wanting to grow chili peppers in their garden? Let's say they could have eaten the latest super hot peppers, been enthralled by them, and want to get that daily burn and not having to buy whole pods from somebody. No. Would you suggest that they start off by buying some chili pepper seeds?
No, it's too late for seeds. I mean, around the country right now, it's planting time. Depending on where you are, of course, in northern climes, it'll be a little bit later than it is right now. But here in the South Valley of Albuquerque, the average date of the last frost is May 1, and that's usually when everybody plants, is if they check the forecast and make sure they're not going to have some kind of freeze or something. But since it takes a while to get the chili peppers to germinate and to grow into the proper size for transplanting, I always recommend that people buy the bedding plants themselves. And you can go to a nursery and buy the bedding plants, or you can go to one of the big box stores. They all have them, Home Depot, Walmart, Kmart, all these places. They usually get them from a company called Bonnie Plants, which is one of the largest wholesale distributors of bedding plants of all kinds. But they have a good selection of chili peppers, and I've used their peppers before, and they're good. So lacking that, if you want some of the real exotic varieties, like the super hots or something like that, you can buy them, and they'll be shipped to you from chiliplants.com. That's chili with an E. And Janie, who runs the place, along with her husband Fernando, they're really good people, and I usually order from them. But I'm not this year just because I decided to grow my own plants from seeds. I'm fortunate enough to have a small greenhouse, and I'm able to do that. So I did it all by myself this year. But most years I do depend on them for both tomatoes and chili peppers, and sometimes eggplants too. Once you've selected the kind of chilies you want, then you have to pay attention to how you want to grow them. And you can grow them in container, or you can grow them in the garden plot. And basically, chili peppers are about as easy to grow as tomatoes. They don't take as much nitrogen as tomatoes do. As a matter of fact, if you over-fertilize chili pepper plants, you will get all foliage and no pods. So be careful about the fertilizer on the chili plants. And the soil has to be well drained, whether it's in a container or strictly in your garden. It has to be well drained. If water sits on the chili pepper's roots and the soil does not drain out, the chili peppers will die because they get oxygen to the roots, and the water, of course, interferes with that. It blocks the oxygen from being able to get into the roots, and the plants just die. So make sure that it's well drained. In other words, if you're using a container, make sure it has a hole in the bottom for the water to be able to drain out. And don't use garden soil in a pot because it packs too tightly. So you want to use some commercial potting soil that is real well drained, and then as long as it's draining, you can water as much as you need to.
Now, would you recommend that any type of soil is good for planting chili peppers, or do you recommend some over another type of soil?
Well, you don't want a heavy clay, or if you do have a heavy clay, you want to break it up with some commercial perlite. Sand will help. Organic materials are always good for soils that are sandy or clay-based. Because that makes them what's called friable. In other words, the soil is a mixture of different things and it's able to drain. It's not one solid mass of clay, which, is not a good soil mix at all. And you don't want a soil that's too acid either, and that means a low pH. You want a neutral pH of around 7. That would be the best for chili plants. Maybe a little bit on the base side, going up to maybe 8. On the pH meter or something like that, but you don't want to have it either too alkaline or too acid just neutral is the best kind of soil. And most of the potting soils you'll find are either neutral or going a little bit to acid because they use peat, as a basis for it, and that tends to be a little bit acid. So just make sure you have a good mix of soil, and you'll probably do all right. Chili peppers prefer full sun. They can live in partial sun, as long as they get a couple hours of full sun every day. But for the best results, chilies like full sun just like tomatoes do.
Now, are there any minimum number of hours of sunlight that people should shoot for?
Well, I would say if they get 4 or 5 hours of direct sun, that would be the best, probably the minimum that they would need. Although I did an experiment one year and I grew habaneros, and knowing they were tropical plants, usually their origin was around sea level or something like that. And I thought maybe the ultraviolet rays from being 5,000 feet high here might hurt them. So I put them under a shade screen, a light shade screen, and they grew fine. It was more diffused light than it was direct sunlight, but they did great, and they flowered and fruited, and I had a good crop.
Mm-hmm.
But so just depending on the variety, you can do some experimentation and find out what they like. If you do get the bedding plants from a nursery or from chiliplants.com, make sure you harden them off before you plant them in the garden. Because if you take plants that are used to fairly low light, like would be in a greenhouse, or in a Walmart with less light, they'll sun scald. In other words, the ultraviolet rays will burn the leaves of the plants, and then you'll have to cut them back, and you'll have a delay and all that kind of stuff. So the way to harden them off is to put them outside in full sun for just a few hours every day, or in partial sun for a few hours every day, so that the wind will blow them around. That toughens up the stems. If you put a tender chili pepper seedling in and you get a 30-mile wind, it'll just blow the heck out of it and probably kill it. So you want it to be tough, and the only way it's going to be tough is if it moves around by natural processes until the stem starts toughening, and then it starts getting a little bit woody even when it's small, and they'll be able to withstand the winds. Mine did yesterday. We had 35, 40-mile-an-hour winds, and my chilies were out there doing fine. But they had been out and hardened off for at least 2 weeks probably. And I was putting them out during the sunny days and bringing them up into the greenhouse at night when the temperature dropped. That seems to be working fine. And now I'm ready to plant this weekend and put them all in. I'm growing all the super hot plant I'm growing in containers just because they're a little bit easier to maintain. I use the soaker hoses to water with, so I can make a line that's 25 feet long and put a 25-foot soaker hose on top of it.
Yeah.
And then I just turn the hose on and walk away and go back a half an hour later, and it's all watered. Don't have to really mess with it too much. And I use the soaker hoses in the garden too. A lot of people say, well, you might as well use drip. Well, drip is really more complicated than a soaker hose. You have to have water distribution. The lines get clogged. Soaker hoses have their problems. You put too much water pressure in, they might burst. But still, they're inexpensive compared to a drip system. And you should only use them if you really know what you're doing or you want to go professional and grow a large amount. We use drip we have a 2-acre super hot field down in Las Cruces, Marlon Bensinger and I do, and we use drip in about half of it, where because of the drought and the water shortage, the amount of water that's being put into the ditches is being extremely curtailed. So we use a well and a pump, and about half of ours is ditch irrigation and half is drip irrigation down there. But if you're just growing a few in your backyard, you might want to consider New Mexican chilies because they're so flavorful, and the green ones that turn red, and you can use them green or red. And they're not very hot, but we eat them in such concentrations in the sauces that they seem hotter than they really are. Mm-hmm. You might want to grow some habaneros. Usually the Bonnie plants that are distributed through these big box stores, they have some habaneros in there too. You might want to grow some yellow hots, some jalapenos, some serranos. They have all those kinds of varieties. And the jalapenos and serranos are particularly good in salsas, and that's what I use them for. And we're seeing more and more chilies pop up everywhere in the supermarkets and so forth. And if they're fresh and if they're ripe, like you could go to Albertsons and buy an habanero and take the seeds out and dry them and then germinate them. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, it's a little bit late in the year now. Today is, 26th of May, 26th of April, coming on to the 1st of May. And so you ought to buy some bedding plants and get yourself going.
Gotcha. What about the topic of flowering and pollination and keeping the strains of the chilies pure, and maybe even inadvertently creating a hybrid of chili peppers? What's your advice on all of that?
Well, it just depends on whether or not they're going to be raising seed for next year. If you're not going to be raising seed for next year, then there's no worry because nothing's going to happen. In other words, planting an habanero next to a jalapeno is not going to have anything to do with the fruits that develop this year. The genetic information would be in the seeds that would be germinated by cross-pollination. And usually cross-pollination is done by insects such as bees, but bees are not the only pollinators, and honeybees are not the only bees. There's plenty of bees around that pollinate. And so chili peppers are usually self-pollinating unless an insect brings the pollen from another chili plant to one of your plants. Otherwise, wind will not cross-pollinate chilies at all. So it has to be insects. So if you really want to have pure seeds, you can put a netting over the plants or over a certain branch. Just buy some cheesecloth and make a net. If you have trouble finding cheesecloth, it's sold at paint stores. It's really inexpensive, and you can just use rubber bands or a piece of string to tie off a branch, a flowering branch, and those fruits that develop from the flowers on that flowering branch will be pure seed for next year if you're going to do it that way. But you have to protect from cross-pollination. If there's, usually they say between 1 mile and 3 miles away, the bees can fly and cross-pollinate chili pepper plants. But in the home garden, it's not a big deal unless you're growing for seed. But the analogy we use is that chili plants are like dogs. And when the two dogs that are different breeds have puppies, then they're going to be mutts. And that's the same thing we say about chili peppers. The next generation from cross-pollination, you'll have all different kinds of pods on the same plant.
Yeah, exactly.
In other words, long ones, short ones, red ones, green ones, yellow ones. You don't know because they're mutts.
Right, exactly. And not to dispel a myth about hybrids and increasing the Scoville heat units of the peppers when it comes to crossing peppers. For instance, when you cross a jalapeno with an habanero,
right,
it's not going to make the heat level of the jalapeno go up any higher.
Well, that's the following year. Remember, it won't make any difference this year. If you have a jalapeno next to an habanero, even if they cross-pollinate, it won't affect this year's fruits. So. Yes. That's why I recommend that you save seeds, because then you have to worry about it. But there's so many seed sources out there, like chilipepperinstitute.org. That's perfect. They have all kinds of seeds, and they're done by the university, so they're true to the different variety that they are. And there's many other seed sources out there for chili pepper seeds, and so I haven't bothered to save seeds except for the super hots. Because the super hots are so expensive these days that some of the seeds for some of the varieties go for $1 a piece. So you might as well save the seeds for that and go through the trouble. I'm going to be in one variety, and that's a variety of scorpion that's been developed by the University of Louisiana and a friend of mine named Primo, and the variety's called Primo. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. They've tested pretty hot down there at the University of Louisiana, something like 1.35 or something like that. But I don't think anybody's applying for to be the holder of the Guinness record, just because that's sort of meaningless these days, because the Guinness people have no idea what they're doing. So
I totally agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, everybody thinks that it's the beer company, but it's not. It's the brother of the person who owns the beer company who has the Guinness World Records. Same name, same family, different companies, but they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they all they do is, they collect information about records. They don't know anything about chili peppers or how hot they should be or how they should be measured or how they should be tested or anything like that. So really, we need an independent organization judging the heat of chili peppers, and we'll see if that happens or not. I think people waste their time with the Guinness thing because as soon as somebody gets the record, somebody else will beat the record by a little bit, as if it matters.
Well, it's kind of gotten to the point where it's really silly. I mean, you have the super hots and several different varieties all registering, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 million Scoville units. I mean, most people, even a lot of experienced chili heads, really can't tell too much of a difference between the different heat levels. So because they are so high, it's almost become kind of meaningless.
It is meaningless. everybody's interested in the biggest, the hottest, the best, and what's the record and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, these peppers are so hot they're inedible for most people. There are some people who were born without capsaicin receptors, and they can rub these chili peppers in their eyes and nothing happens, like that woman in India. It's the craziest video I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And but she's immune, and there's people who are immune to poison ivy. It's the same thing. There are some people who are severely allergic. They can walk by a poison ivy plant and get poison ivy, seriously, from fumes in the air. It's just human beings are different, and some people are more sensitive than others. Obviously, the woman in India was not born with any capsaicin receptors anywhere in her body, which is highly unusual, but it does happen. You know, I like the super hots. People want them.
Mm-hmm.
We had Melissa's, the specialty produce company out in California. They wanted to buy the whole field from us. And, of course, we didn't do that. Orders from other people, but that's the kind of demand that there is. And the reason there aren't more of them is because they're the most difficult peppers to grow. I've got to tell you that it's not. In other words, their growing season is upwards of 6 months. And so instead of a 3 or 4 month growing season like most chili pepper plants, these are twice as long. And so if you're growing in a place like New Mexico, you barely can get a crop just because of the length of the season. And in Las Cruces, the season's about a month longer than it is up here in Albuquerque, 220 miles away. So we have a slightly longer season. And we did real well the first year. Then we had germination problems and a little bit of crop failure the second year. And we're hoping for the best this year. But I tell you, I wouldn't be a professional farmer. It's just too scary. You just don't know what's happening. It's actually more of a risk than it is like doing a fiery food show.
Oh, yeah. There are way too many variables involved.
Yeah, and I admire farmers. Don't get me wrong. I'm the chair of the board of the Farm and Ranch Museum, and I know a lot of farmers, and they're friends of mine, and I respect and like them a lot, but I wouldn't do it, except in this circumstance where I'm just sort of a silent marketing partner in the partnership, and I don't really have to go down there and work in the field. Thank goodness. I have my own little field up here I got to work in. But I have fun doing it. And it's a good hobby, but I wouldn't want to do it professionally.
I do, too, and I have a hobby garden myself. And there have been a couple years where I haven't grown any chili peppers at all. But most years I do, because I like to pick the pods, save them. Probably about 90% of them I will dry them and save them for future usage in recipes, grind them up, what have you, just to have a nice, steady supply of super hots. That's probably what I've grown most of.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the other things, the milder peppers, the jalapenos and whatnot, I will use fresh. One thing I wanted to ask you, since I live in Missouri, it can get unbearably hot and humid here. For a great number of days, they could be 90, 95, even 100 degrees. And my chili pepper plants seem to start to wilt every day, even if I water them. What kind of advice would you have for somebody like me who is dealing with that? And it's not just me here in Missouri, but it's through probably a good portion of the U.S.
Well, it just depends on, we don't have humid weather here, so I'm not really experienced in growing them. When I lived in Virginia where we did have humid weather, I wasn't into chili peppers at the time. I didn't really learn about them until I moved out here in '74. So I don't really know what it's like growing them in a really humid area. Basically, if if there's enough breeze, humidity shouldn't bother them at all. And the heat, I don't know. We get to 105 here, and the chili peppers, they wilt a little bit sometimes in the sun, but then they bounce right back. You just have to keep them. You have to water more. That's what I would advise.
And that's what I've done in the past. I've given them just a little bit more water every day. I don't want to overwater them, so it's kind of been a balancing act with me.
Right, and as long as it's well drained, though, and you see, you can tell in a pot if the water is standing in the pot for longer than 15 seconds, it's not well drained. And so the same thing is in your garden. If there are pools of water in your garden after you water, and the pools stay there for 10 or 15 minutes, it's not well drained soil.
Right.
And so, you can test your soil before you even plant to make sure that it's well drained enough for chili peppers. Now, some plants they don't care about how well drained the soil is, but chilies really do. It's one of the crucial things that you have to watch out for.
Exactly. Well, Dave, do you have anything going on with you? Any new projects coming up on the horizon?
Well, we had a record for the 25th annual Fiery Foods and Barbecue Show. We did 20,446 people by clicker count.
Wow, that's nice.
And other show producers don't use clickers to measure their crowds, and so they're always wildly guessing about what the attendance was or estimating from revenues. But we know exactly how many people were at the show this year, and it's pleasing to me to see the response continuing to grow after doing this thing for 25 years. And so we're real happy with that. The Scovia Awards are going to start a little bit earlier this year, toward the middle of June. So that's coming up. That'll be the next big thing we do. And so far, for the last 4 years, we've had record number of entries each year. So that's getting more popular, too. I don't really have any new books coming out anytime soon, but I'm working on a couple. I'm working on a book called Dishing Up New Mexico for Story Publications, and there's been Dishing Up Oregon, Dishing Up Washington, and New Hampshire, and Maine, and books like that. And we pitched them just to do one in New Mexico, and they decided to do it. So I'm working on that one right now, and that won't be out for a year or so. That's sort of fun. I get to really do more crops than chili peppers. And we do grow some unusual things here. We grow hops for beer making. That's pretty interesting. Never really knew much about that, but I'm learning. And there's a guy down in the southern part of the state who actually literally makes balsamic vinegar. And he ages his vinegar for 10 years. And I'm saying, boy, that's sort of planning for the future. So I'm having fun meeting all these people with crops that I wasn't familiar with or products that I wasn't familiar with. New Mexico never ceases to surprise because everybody thinks our number one food crop is chili peppers. It used to be, but it's not any longer. The number one food crop in New Mexico is pecans.
Oh, interesting.
Believe it or not.
I would have never thought of that.
We're usually either the largest or second largest pecan producer in the country, either tied or exceeding Georgia and Texas. And sometimes Arizona creeps in there into the top 5. But pecans are native to the Southwest and northern Mexico, so they grow really well here. And boy, they suck up the water, though. And so Las Cruces now, you see chili farms all over the place, but you also see forests and forests, what we call monoculture forests. In other words, they have one kind of tree and one kind of tree only, and that's a pecan. And they suck the water out of the ground like you wouldn't believe, and so that's not helping with the drought. I'm not trying to malign pecan growers, but those trees, they, a tree that's 50 feet tall will drink a lot more water than a little chili plant 2 feet tall. Mm-hmm. So I think we have 40,000 acres in the pecans now in New Mexico. That's a lot of pecans.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Well, it's been good talking to you.
Well, you too. It's always a pleasure. So, until next time.
Okay, well, we'll do one on the harvest.
Sounds great.
Okay, talk to you later, Scott. Bye.
Bye-bye. Very good advice from Dave there. And Dave's headquarters on the web is fiery-foods.com. You can find out more about the BBQ Dragon at bbqdragon.com, or you can just go to their Kickstarter page, as mentioned. Ken Alexander's website is fieryworld.com, and the product I reviewed, Captain Jim's Sauces Molten Orange Ambrosia Pepper Sauce, can be found at captainjimsauces.com. Or you can just go to weeklyfirecast.com or twoguystalking.com/Firecast. Either one of those websites. Go to the show notes for episode 32, and you can find all the links there. And speaking of links, if you're unfamiliar with my blog, scottrobertsweb.com, again, all through the summer, I'm having the Ultimate Hot Sauce Showdown, a number of polls, a number of matchups between pairs of hot sauces that you get to vote on, that you get to decide. So that's going on right now here in the late spring and summer of 2013. I also invite everyone to check out my Facebook page and like it over at facebook.com/ScottRobertsWeb. You can also follow me at twitter.com/ScottRoberts. You can hit me up on Google+, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Just do a search for Scott Roberts or Scott Roberts Web, and you can find me. And now comes the part of the show where I give a shout out to everyone who has retweeted the previous link to the Weekly Firecast or shared it on Facebook. And as I always say, this is how it works. Whenever I post a link to a new episode of the Weekly Firecast, if you shared a link to others on Facebook or you retweet it on Twitter, I will mention you or your company's name in the very next episode. So here's the fine people who did that. On Twitter, There was KG Wan's Hot Sauce. Their Twitter handle is @1XINFIN. There was Joe Lineberger. His Twitter handle is @Homers54. There's Midwest Chili Heads. His Twitter handle is @MWCHS. There's Pittsburgh Peppers. Their Twitter handle is PGH Peppers. There's my buddy Sean Mundell. His Twitter handle is @TGuzzler. There was Zach Leaf. His Twitter handle is @ZachLeaf. And James Haskell. His Twitter handle is JD Haskell. And to find folks who share the link on Facebook, there was Jim Duffy of RefiningFiredChilies.com. Thank you very much, Jim. There was the High Octane Sauce Company. Thank you very much, Kevin, for sharing that. There was Firehead Thomas Gately, and a person I'd interviewed just a couple episodes ago, Brad Bishop, also shared a link. Thank you very much, everyone. So, in the first couple days after I publish episode 32, be sure to go right on Facebook. Be sure to go right on Twitter. Find those links, share them, retweet them, and I will give you a big shout out in the very next episode. Thanks again, everybody. And before I get on out of here, I'd just like to say thanks to everyone for your love and support, for your feedback. You know, whether it's been gushingly positive, of course I love to hear that. If it's also constructively critical, I also like to hear that. Things you think that I can improve on, guests to have on, topics to talk about, I want to hear from you. And it's really easy to do that, by the way. Just simply go to the numeral 2guystalking.com/Firecast. Go to the simple form on the left-hand side, fill it out, and I promise I read each and every one of those contact emails. So, that's it for me. God bless everybody, and until next time, remember, keep it burning.
This has been the Weekly Firecast. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast via iTunes or at the official website at scottrobertsweb.com/weeklyfirecast. The Weekly Firecast is part of the Two Guys Talking podcast network. For more information on other great Two Guys Talking programming, you can go to twoguystalking.com. That's the number 2, guystalking.com. Thanks for listening. And remember, keep it burning.
And there's a lawnmower. They just have to do it when I'm recording, no other time. Right next door.